We welcome in our man Brenden Nunes, of course, the host of the King's Pulse podcast. Been working with James Ham over at the King's Beat in their podcast as well. Brenden, you heard the start of that conversation there. By the way, appreciate you for being with us. What'd you think of De'Aaron's play last night, particularly there in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I mean, I think thanks for having me on. First of all, guys, of course, always glad to join you.
The Heartbreak Kid.
I'm slowly embracing it. I denied that at first. It felt a little awkward, but I guess I'm buying in at this point.
Talk about one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, the legend. That should be embraced from the start, Brenden.
It's true. I had to educate myself was the issue.
You probably don't have enough friends that are wrestling fans. If you had told your old buddy who's now in Indiana, my nickname on the radio is the Heartbreak Kid, oh, he would have popped for it. He would have been like, my man Brenden.
Yeah, he definitely would have educated me, yeah.
Then he would have said something smart like, the Heartbreak Kid doesn't play defense either, or he would have said something like that.
It's fair enough. And we're going to have to see if he can guard this version of De'Aaron Fox in, we got 7 games now?
2 weeks. 2 weeks from today.
The showdown at Conseco. Well, it's not Conseco anymore, but yeah.
It's going to be pretty fun if those guys guard each other. You got to think they're both going to have a little bit of extra juice in that one. And De'Aaron, if you're getting even more on top of what we've seen recently, he's just another beast right now. I think that we've seen a similar version of De'Aaron Fox. This might be the best basketball that we've ever seen him play. Maybe there's a stretch throughout last season, but yeah, I mean, just what we're seeing him do both in scoring the ball and passing is some of the best play I've seen from him throughout his career. He's kind of able to get to his spots wherever he wants. I think he's been really efficient in the mid-range, and if he, lots of pick and rolls, he goes left and kind of snakes back right, and one of those typical and dribbling in your offhand, he likes to pull up, and you see that elbow jumper that's his shot. He's back to actually driving through big men at the rim. There was so much earlier of where is his willingness to be physical and go through these bigs at the rim? And he just looks back. The word that Alvin's been using is rejuvenated. And I think we definitely see that.
Damian asked me an interesting question earlier today. It was a great question. I want to get everybody's opinion on this because it's a great hypothetical. But he asked if De'Aaron had played to this level at the beginning of the season, would the Kings season still gone the same way it's gone? I say no. I think they would have won some games earlier in the season that maybe would have just kept the vibes good in that locker room and around, and who knows if trades still happen or whatever. But I think that start kind of got them on a bad trajectory just for the whole season. Not to necessarily blame him, but if he would have been playing better, I think things would have gone a little different. Damian thinks nothing would have changed. What do you think about that, Brenden?
Yeah, it's weird, right? There was so much at the beginning of the year that they were winning despite the play of De'Aaron Fox. Not that he was hurting their play or anything, but it's just you expected more from him. And I don't know. It's hard to say because, again, I come back to those two guys, Buddy and Bagley, that didn't want to be here. And I think that was probably wearing on De'Aaron and the entire locker room. And I don't think we would have had this rejuvenated version of De'Aaron if those guys were still around. I think that's what it took for those guys to leave. And I think there is also an aspect of as much as he worked De'Aaron, that is, and Tyrese at the same time, both of those guys to get comfortable playing with one another, I think that it made things a little bit more difficult, and you kind of saw a lot of growing pains this year and last year, and especially this season because Tyrese emerged into his own beast of a player where De'Aaron's all right, I need to let him have his turn. And De'Aaron's just not used to being a guy that is waiting and letting somebody else have their turn. And I think that's something that he probably could have got better at, but I guess I'm kind of taking a cheap way out of your question here and just saying, I don't know that we could have seen that De'Aaron earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many weird, De'Aaron's 44 the other night, season high. They lost by 1. His previous season high was 37. They lost by 19. And then you look at, he has, let's see, it looks like the Lakers and the Magic, 34 and 33 points. They won both of those games. And then he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6 other 30-point games this season.
Mm.
They lost them all.
Mm.
Like, we constantly, and this is, I guess this is just us as fans searching for answers, right? Trying to figure things out. Like, we want to blame something. We've blamed Luke. We've blamed Buddy. We've blamed Marvin. Some people now are blaming De'Aaron. There's a lot of issues on this team that need to be fixed this offseason. And Brenden, as Kenny and I have talked about, this has to be the perfect offseason for Monty McNair. He has to hit on every pitch that comes his way.
He definitely does. And at very least, it sounds like he hit a solid triple. I don't know. It depends how people feel weird about the Tyrese swap. I think that as long as you're adding more to it, this is a double triple from McNair. He's definitely on base with this first swing, and you're getting this version of De'Aaron back in the deal. So it's a good start, but yeah, there's certainly aspects like I think of a San Antonio game really early this year where De'Aaron played extremely well, but a lot of those came as he was kind of the game was already a little out of hands, and I think the conversation we've seen around a little bit of like De'Aaron being an empty stats guy is maybe blown a little bit out of proportion, but like I think that's an example of maybe running it up a little bit when things were already past that point. So there's certain games where like that 30 wasn't doing that much earlier in the year, but I don't think that we're seeing that throughout the second part of this season. And what it comes down to is like guys can't do it by themselves. Like Curry averaged 32 last year. He led the league with 32 points per game, and that Golden State team was not good. Like, and I'm not trying to say that, and they had Draymond Green on that team. And I'm not trying to say that De'Aaron is Steph or that Sabonis is Draymond, that they have that chemistry or anything like that. But really what changed on that team from last year to this year is the surrounding cast. Like, it's no big splashes that they made. It's Otto Porter or getting Iguodala back. It's small changes that complement what your stars are. And I think it is more complicated because obviously Golden State, you know what your scheme is. Like, you can figure out the exact definition of the players that you need. And I think that we could sit here and theory craft what the best version of complementary role players for Fox and Sabonis is. But the reason we don't know, and there's still going to be an asterisk, is we don't even know what scheme they're playing in. Like, we don't know what the offense or defense or anything looks like next year because I'd guess that Alvin is not back with the way that this year has ended. So there's still a lot of change that needs to be made with the roster and the coaching staff. But I do think that they're working with a really encouraging starting point.
And that's what I talk about when I think about this trade. And I continue to say, hey, it was nobody's fault. No one person's fault what was going on before. But when you had Tyrese and De'Aaron here, they had issues playing together, producing together. I think they were fine personally, like they liked playing with each other, but they weren't able to produce. And then I thought, that they were pretty soft up top on the defensive end with those two as your starting backcourt. So there were certain times when I just felt like I couldn't see where they were going to get to where they wanted to get with those two. You make the trade for Sabonis, and it balances things out a little bit more, not a finished product, but a little bit more. And now I feel like I can see a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel with trying to get better. Do you have the same feelings about this roster compared to the pre-trade deadline roster, or is it still kind of muffled to you as well?
I do. I also worry. I think last time I was on here, I talked about how everything was fine and dandy also for the original roster this year, 10 games into the season, and then things go downhill pretty quickly. So I do worry that like you could start to see some guys be unhappy. Like the DiVincenzo situation stands out to me. Guy plays a dozen minutes last night, and I'm working on an article right now, but like he said the first day that he got here after that debut he had against Washington, that like, it was kind of tough him coming back in Milwaukee. He played 17 games and he's just trying to get a rhythm, but he was fighting against the rotations to get a rhythm. And I don't think he expected to be fighting for minutes the same way that he has so far. And maybe that's why he's taken a couple ill-advised shots. And, how quick do you get back to a I don't know if I want to swing it to that guy sort of mentality. Like, I think we're far from that, but it doesn't take that long to get there. So I think I still have things that I'm definitely concerned about, but there's a lot more areas that I can find optimism rather than just, oh, hey, Tyrese is really good, which was pretty much the whole thing earlier in the year. So I think that it's weird. I don't exactly know how to approach, like, going up 19 and 20 in each of these last 3 games, and then or 3 of the last 4, I think it is, and only winning one of them. Like, because you blew the lead, but I can't help but kind of be like, yeah, but we saw a really good first half team, and like we didn't see that level of team earlier this year.
Yeah, that's a tough. You're right. You're 100% right. But it's also that looks like, especially the Knicks game. Yo, that looked like a different basketball team in the first half. Like, they were living at the foul line. Ball was like everything. Like, man, this is beautiful basketball. And then the second half happened, and you don't know what to make when things like that happen. Where I get lost, Brenden, is I don't know what to make of it. Like, who are you more likely to be, the team in the first half or the team in the second half? And this year says you're the team in the second half. The last 16 years says you're actually the team in the second half. And it just gets inherited down from player to player to player to player. It's like, no, you just adopt this culture of losing. You brought up Dante DiVincenzo, though, and I wanted to – it's always fascinating to me who Alvin – and not just Alvin, because Luke did this too, who they really let, like, run and have some leeway, and who they don't. Because Justin Holiday has done a lot of questionable things out there as the starting 2 guard. And as you noted there a second ago, Brenden, Dante played 11 minutes and 32 seconds last night.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, Dante's been frustrating. Like, I get.
I look at Alvin a lot and go, I don't get it. I don't know what Alvin's doing right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same with mainly rotational questions. Like, Chimezie Metu finally showed up last night. Hey, he did decent. I don't love Metu or anything, but it's
hey,
come on, man. Freeport for life. Stop playing.
We all love Chimezie Metu here on D'Lo and KC.
I definitely love Mezzi the person. But it's one of those weird, like, him, Harkless, Lyles, all these guys go from DNPs less than 10 minutes a night to all of a sudden you're getting thrown out there in the fire. And I just hope we don't see this same sort of thing with Dante. Like, that's where I was. My bad. That DiVincenzo, I understand people that are looking like, okay, well, he's just not been playing well. And that's why he's not out there. There's these ill-advised shots. You get this Buddy Hield flashbacks, and they're horrifying. I get it. You get like 1 or 2 of those a game. But look at what he's giving you on defense. There's so much talk about the communication that he brings, and he's one of the guys that's talking about wanting to change the culture, about his energy being infectious. And my real issue is what you talked about. Justin Holiday is your other option. If you had a different other option, sure. But Justin Holiday is taking some Buddy Hield shots out there too. And he's not doing the same thing that Dante's doing for you on defense. Dante's a better passer. Like, I get being frustrated with Dante and feeling like he doesn't his play as of late doesn't deserve 25 minutes on a good team like he wasn't getting in Milwaukee. They don't have better options. And if there's an aspect of we're going to be slow with him because of contract negotiation advantages for this offseason, how much does that tick Dante off? I'd be pretty agitated if I felt like that's maybe what was going on and you're trying to build a good culture. Like, his situation is really weird to me, and I could be overreacting. This could be one game. Maybe Alvin didn't quite realize what was going on. I've kind of got the impression that's happened once or twice this season. And, Alvin just said that the quote is, quote, you look at matchups sometimes and what you have to do defensively and things like that. And sometimes matchups are just a little bit better. I wouldn't read anything into it, really. Mm-hmm. So he said that, and I proceeded to really read into it. But, if this is the outlier, then cool. But I do want to see Dante get a little bit more opportunity because shoots really well off the catch from three. I think he's the 3-and-D guy they need if he can just chill on some of these shots a little bit.
Yeah, I remember, and I know you're familiar with it too, but when James Ham came on the show yesterday and talked about the perceived advantages that the organization has with, the contract and how much he may be offered in the off season, that stuck in my head. And I think it's more so Alvin just lost track of what was going on and lost, because that happens, right? Like that kind of happens. I'm not coaching in the NBA, but I've coached, and there's guys that you sub out and you 10, 15 minutes later, I forgot he's on the bench and I wanted to get him back in. Those things happen. And I think it's more so that, but that contract thing that did stick in my head a little bit when James brought that up.
And to me, like, you got to find out if the guy's worth the money. And if he is, then you pay him. Like, obviously you liked this guy. I don't think he's going to play his way in these final, we got 14 games, something like that, into some crazy deal. Like, you're talking about, $4 million more a year if he happens to, like, catch fire at the end of this season and maybe show something. And if he does, then you pay him and he's worth it, because the best version of Dante DiVincenzo is your starting two guard on this team.
Yeah, I agree.
You think Dante could be the starting two guard here?
I think he can. I think he needs to do more, for sure. I need more than what we've seen. But I like the aspect of him sometimes being able to put the ball on the floor and being an okay decision maker, like in second side actions when it gets swung to him, and he already has an advantage that he's working with. I think that catch and shoot, he shot the ball really well since he's come to Sacramento. It's these off the bounce, and to me, if he's in a lineup with Fox and Sabonis and he's playing most of his minutes with those guys, then he's not getting opportunities to be all erratic off the bounce. Like, you can just tone it down a little bit because these other guys are doing a majority of those responsibilities. And if you can just catch and shoot a little bit more often and still bring all that energy and infectious effort on defense, like, I think he can be. It's probably nothing but like a coin flip if I had to guess right now, but I think he can.
We also mentioned earlier, and Damian, who's killing it today, just absolutely killing it today. He mentioned about how Monty McNair this offseason, he can't, what was the term used? He can't treat Terrence Davis like Luke Walton, where it's got to be, where you can't go into the offseason trying to figure out, we'll go into the regular season and see, if that works. We think it might work or whatever the case may be. When trying to upgrade that shooting guard position, you have to you have to assume that Terrence Davis isn't good enough to be your starting two guard. Like, you've got to go out there, make deals, look to acquire players that possibly can fill in that starting spot. And if you get to training camp and Terrence is balling, then that's a better problem to have, where you got two guys that you think can start as opposed to not having any because you just went into the offseason all willy-nilly. Do you think that's the approach that Monty is going to have with DiVincenzo and Terrence Davis, that he needs to upgrade at that position? Or is he possibly seeing it where, I got these two guys that could battle it out and be starters?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got to just make a really big improvement in two of the three spots with the 2, 3, or 4. Like, Harrison's the other one that stands out, right? And if you do think that one of those guys can be your starter, like, to me, you have the assets to get 2 more starter caliber guys with your draft pick and Rashawn Holmes. And if you want to, like, I really like Davion. I think he's an interesting asset at the same time. You have things to work with to get 2 more starter caliber guys. So I certainly hope not. And we've seen Monty be really patient, and it seems like just kind of waiting and knowing what his assets are that he wants to move on from, it seems like, but just waiting until what is going to be peak value for these guys. And it's so hard to know when that is, because a lot of times where you had a better deal 2 days ago and you didn't know that was going to be the best deal. So I think that from my point of view, I just don't know that he has the leeway to be patient in the same way, because Sabonis gets a Kang's stank on him and all of a sudden is counting down days until the end of his contract is out of here. And then Fox is asking out. Like, it doesn't take that long for things to go downhill. You know what I mean? In the same way, it doesn't take long for things to go in the right direction, but it's got to turn around starting at the beginning of next season, because as much as I'm encouraged by these games we've seen, and we can sit and, I'm talking about this being the best case scenario where you're competitive but still losing a game, at the beginning of next season, that same outcome isn't cutting it. Right. So you got to add more. So I certainly hope that that's not the mindset with Monty. In worst case, you feel like you need to go get starter caliber guys, and what? Oh, damn, now we have starter caliber guys on the bench too if they do show out. Like, that's a fine problem.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still hung up. Brenden got Monty McNair trading both of his draft picks and his upcoming draft pick. Woo! Boy. I mean, I ain't mad. Whatever makes the team better.
I'm heartless after Ty. I'm heartless after Ty. Anyone's on the table at this point.
The Kings broke Brenden Nunes. Brenden ain't even been bolded yet, and they broke him. Oh, it's a cold world. It's a cold world. Davion is interesting though, in that, like, I don't feel like they've done a good job at establishing exactly what his role is. Since De'Aaron returned, he had a clear defined role, arguably for the only time this season, when De'Aaron Fox was out and Tyrese was here. Simultaneously, Tyrese is out, De'Aaron Fox is back, and I don't feel like they've really nailed down what to do with Davion on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, Davion closed the game where we usually would see Dante last night, and I think that while his numbers are down, because, there was a lot of talk, like, prior to the All-Star break, that this guy had been playing really well. Like, 10 games before the break, you're seeing 16 points, 4.5 assists on 45 from the field, 39 from 3. Like, those are really solid numbers. And it's like, okay, maybe he's just getting comfortable at this point. And then now you have 8 post All-Star break where his minutes are down to 22 a night, and there's some pretty significant variance there. One of them he plays 11, another he plays almost 30 on 2 occasions. And those averages he only broke double digits twice, but 6.8 points and 2.5 assists in those 8 games, where he kind of comes back down to earth. And it's, not this same, okay, he's figured it out. And I think in the same way that maybe Davion still has to kind of figure out his spot, that it's what you're saying, that they still got to figure out the exact position that they want him in. And it's just weird, because he's another guy where I didn't think this before, but I kind of think he could be the starting 2 on this team. I don't love the size there, but the 3-point shot has got to come around. This also might be because they're desperate to figure out who the starting 2 is, so I'm kind of like, try everything. But yeah, I mean, I think that he kind of fits the bill with exactly everything I said with Dante too, and maybe even a little bit better of a decision maker, where he doesn't have those what the heck are you doing moments. So yeah, I mean, I think that Davion they need to figure out exactly what they want to do with him. And he's another guy where, we heard Ty say it on that JJ Redick pod, like, when they draft Davion, that those 3 guards, Fox, Tyrese, and Davion, are looking around the room like, all right, what's going on here? We're not all sticking around that long. It's a matter of time. So, maybe, like, De'Aaron seems rejuvenated, right? Like I said, word we've been hearing. I think that there's probably an aspect of Davion that was like the same. All right, I'm one of the 2 that's sticking around, but now your role is fluctuating a bunch because Dante comes in. So it's just tricky, like he's a guy that is still figuring out the league himself, and this variance in minutes and opportunity, and even what role he's playing, where sometimes he's guarding 3s. Like, we haven't really seen him guard 1s out there very much, like he was doing at the beginning of the year, of locking up certain guys that are high profile and things like that. So I think that, hopefully a new coach will come in and have a defined idea of, this is how we want to run. Because as much as Alvin talks about, our identity is pace, I think that if your identity is pace on a basketball team, that you're just not very good. You got to be able to be good at defense or half court offense. If you're bad at both, I don't know what is going on with your roster. And that's kind of what we've seen. And it's a lot of responding to the other team rather than trying to play your own brand of basketball. And I think that if a new coach comes in and has that defined on what they're trying to establish as that brand, that we can see more consistent opportunity and role for Davion and Dante, if Dante is still around next season, or Davion. And I think that could be beneficial, where you know where you're getting your shots and your opportunities, because right now we don't know. It doesn't seem like they know, and that's got to be difficult.
Yeah. I think a coaching change would help out some of these guys immensely. Alvin Gentry knows more basketball than I've forgotten. I got immense respect for him, but his style doesn't work with where this franchise and where these players, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, Davion, it doesn't work with where they're at in their careers. I'll say it like that. One of the revelations this year, though, Brenden, for me personally, has been Damian Jones. He has impressed me at least, almost every time he's stepped on the court. It's not like he's having this all-star season, but he's super solid. He embraces his role. He knows what his role is out on the floor, and he executes it flawlessly. What do you think about Damian Jones and the possibility of him coming back? Do you think that, he's going to be an affordable player that the Kings could probably bring back and keep in the fold for another couple of years?
I think he's definitely going to be affordable. I mean, we saw, I think the same way that we talk about him and have been encouraged that, like, the Lakers had 2 10 days with him where their whole fan base would say that they loved what they saw from him. Atlanta felt the same way. Like, I think there's been a lot of teams that are really interested in what they've seen with Damian Jones. But as much as I like him, as a third string center and possibly a second string center, that just doesn't have that much value in the league. Like, I really like Damian Jones and what we've seen from him. I don't know that he's a guy that his play style is getting you all that much money out there. So to me, like, if you're moving on from Rashawn, which seems inevitable, I'd be pretty shocked if they didn't, right? And then the other one is Alex Len. Like, Alex Len just got a portion of the MLE where he gets a 2-year, $7.5 million deal. Like, that's Damian Jones money. And it kind of depends. Like, if you move on from Len, if you don't move on from Len, do you want to keep Damian Jones around? Is that how you want to spend your money? Or do you want to, like, pick up Trey Lyles' option if it comes down to some decision like that sort of thing? So if they do get outpriced a little bit, it's probably easy to get a guy who can replicate a similar thing that Damian Jones does. But I do really like having him on this roster, and I think there's a good chance that, like I said, Rashawn is gone, and Alex Len is a guy that, having money going into next year, they're probably going to need to combine some contracts if they're trying to make a big splash move in a trade, where it wouldn't be surprised if he's outwards. And I do think that Damian Jones could stay around. All the guys on the team talk really highly of him as being a hard worker. So I like him, but it's not somebody that I'm like, oh, you have to keep.
Do you think that big trade is still out there? Let me rephrase that. Do you think another big trade is out there for the Kings?
I think it is. It's just all contingent on, like, how much do people like Rashawn and how many draft picks are you willing to throw in? I mean, you're the Sacramento Kings. If you put 3 draft picks on the table, you're getting a big guy back. I don't know that that's the smartest thing to do, but they
Hopefully not. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends who you're talking about, but yeah.
Go ahead. You want to do 2 for who, Kenny? Tell him.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, 2 wouldn't be enough for this man, but Cam Reddish would definitely be. No, but look, if I would be willing to do 2.
That was a joke, people. By the way, just
definitely a joke.
That was a joke.
You gotta listen to the show to know how much I love Cam.
As long as Chimezie Metu isn't in the deal, we're good.
There you go. You go.
I look at 2 for. I do 2 draft picks and Holmes and maybe even Davion for, like, a John Collins or a Julius Randle, because if I'm Monty McNair, there is an aspect of, what do I need to hoard picks for? Like, if it don't work now, I won't even be here. So 2 picks will get the job done to get you John Collins or Julius Randle or somebody like that. Sure, let's do it. And I think you look to do almost whatever it takes to drastically upgrade this roster over the summer.
Yeah, I think that they definitely have to. I think John Collins is the guy that stands out to me. Yeah. Jeremy Grant, like I would guess we're going to hear those conversations strike back up again, and I don't hate it. It just depends how much you're really giving up. I also kind of
I don't hate it as such code for I don't really like it.
Yeah, that's code for I cover the Kings. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. And if they jump into the top 4, I know that like every team could say this really, but if you jump into the top 4, like I'm picking there and then move Rashawn, say you can get, who do we want to throw in?
Paolo.
I know Chet. For some reason, I'm forgetting Jabari Smith.
Oh,
so we want to say Jabari Smith, and then you go and trade Rashawn Holmes for PJ Washington and whatever little bit of salary filler you need. Then that's fine with me as enough of an improvement. I mean, of course, I'm saying that's fine. Jabari Smith's the number 1, number 2 pick, but even Keegan Murray or AJ Griffin and one of these, and then you go do PJ Washington. It's like those are 2 starter caliber guys. Like, maybe that doesn't quite end up being enough and you need to, again, do a little bit more in the offseason, but you made an improvement from there where you have something to work with at the beginning of the season. And even something like that is another, in my mind, like reasonable path to making this roster better this offseason rather than just trading away the pick, or if you feel a need to trade away Davion. I think they have multiple ways to go about this, but when it comes down to it, they got to do something.
Yeah.
Brenden Nunes, the King's Pulse, the King's Beat, the King's Herald. We appreciate you as always, my friend, for hanging out with us.
Always glad to